Welcome back, friends. So this is where we left off. We have our stored procedure code. We understand that this operates when we insert records. We checked it. At the next stage, we are going to do this. I'm going to close this panel. So I'm just going to close it. Click yes to save it. You can now save it under a name that you want, for example, okay? So I'm just going to call it stored proc or inserting records or something like that. And save it anywhere. It doesn't really matter too much. So in my case, I'm just going to save it in a folder that's going with this lesson. That's all. Let me navigate into it. That's good. Close it. Close the SQL Server Object Explorer. And that part is taken care of. We have our table. We have our stored procedure to be executed. And now the next stage, we built up the interface to be run in the browser. So make sure you are inside default.aspx and the project, default.aspx. And let's build up the interface. Now, obviously, here you have a lot of flexibility. You can decide how to do it. So I'll show you some things that you can do. Obviously, you could do many other things. And I'm going to say this. First of all, I'm going to add a text box. I think about the text box, and I think about the fact that in a table, I have a name field. That's why I have one box here first. Okay, switch over to source view for a second. And I'm going to work here. I think it's a little bit easier when it comes to positioning things. So right before the box here, type this. Enter name, so we understand the purpose of the box. And then let's rename the ID on the box. So right now it says text box 1. When you have many controls, it's best to give them meaningful names. So I'll say txt and then name. So text box name, in other words. So understand its purpose. The rest of it you can leave. Now, under it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to add one more now. So besides enter name, I will say now enter email. And again, I'm going to make another box. You can just take this and copy it. So Control C and then Control V down below to paste it in. And notice that automatically is given the name text box 1. So delete that and call it txt and then email. And let's do this one more time. So take the whole thing, copy it all, Control C and then Control V down below. And again, it's given the default name, so just get rid of it and type here txt and then I will say date. And change the text so it says enter date, for example, or something like that. Although keep in mind that ultimately we'll have a new control called a calendar where we will get the date. Okay, I hope you've got that. So this is the basic layout thus far. We have 3 boxes because we have 3 fields in the table. And switch back to design view for a second. And it looks like this. Now you can leave it in this form if you like, obviously. I don't like the horizontal display, so go back to source view. And after the first box, to type a BR. That means push everything after it down to the next line. Same thing with the second box. And let's do this one more time, BR, like that. Because we will have more controls. So make sure that after each box, you have a BR to mean everything after it should be pushed down to the next line. That's what it means. All right, switch back to design view for a second. And it looks as shown here. That's very basic, but good enough for our purposes. Now, all right, and now let's give this a go. So hit Google Chrome, let's give it a launch. I want to see what we have thus far. We're going to build it up in small pieces. And this looks super basic. All right, you've got 3 boxes. Enter name, enter email, enter date. And that's it. Okay, I'm going to close this. At the next stage, we continue. Now, a common problem with input is that people input information in formats that leaves the information inconsistent. For example, the first name is missing. Or maybe the email address is not in a format that is an actual email format, you see? Or maybe the date is missing and such things. So at the next stage now, we're going to make sure that at the browser side, where people interact with the application, we do some basic validation. Okay? So let's take a look here. On the left side in the toolbox, type the following. Type RE, and then left press and drag and drop a required field validator into the page, and place it right after enter name. Required field validator. And this will tell us that anybody who uses the page must enter a value into that. Now, how do you actually make use of it? You've got a connected required field validator together with the box it's supposed to validate. So right-click on required field validator, and then go to its properties. And this is the properties panel for the required field validator, as you can see up there, right here. So make sure you have that showing. And then scroll through it. First of all, error message says required field validator. That's not useful. You want this to show a more friendly message that humans can understand, so I will say must enter name. So that's the visible message that shows on a page. Okay, at the next stage, you scroll through this, and you see where it says here control to validate, that option. Set that to txt name. You need to have that set. So control to validate, the text box that takes the name, and then display a useful message like must enter name. So these are the basic properties of this required field validator. And of course, if you wanted to, you could scroll down and you could rename this validator, give it a different name, like for example, name validator instead of required field validator 1. For our purposes, it doesn't matter too much. All right, I'm going to click off this panel now. Okay, that's gone. And let's continue here. We are going to do this a couple more times. So I'm going to drag this and place it next to enter email, another required field validator. So again, you got to set its properties. You may want to pause the video and do that now. Okay. So let's just complete it together. Properties. And again, error message not useful. I'm going to say must enter email. That's one quantity. And then scroll through it. And the control to validate, make sure you select the correct control, which is the txt email. So make sure up here it says something like required field validator 2, which again you could rename, for example, as email validator or something like that. All right, close this panel here. Now, emails have a very specific format. So at the next stage here, from the panel on the left in the toolbox, if you type RE, besides seeing the required field validator, you also see the regular expression validator. So drag that and drop it next to where it says must enter email. And we're going to set that. Regular expressions are a vast and powerful topic, but what they allow us to ensure is that when someone enters an email, we can't check whether it exists. But what we can do at least is check whether it matches the standard format of an email. So right-click on regular expression validator, go to its properties, and we've got to set those now. So first of all, the error message, we've got to set that first. So I'll type the following. I'll say must enter valid email. By valid, I mean at least make sure that it's formatted according to the rules of an email address. And then again, control to validate. Click here and then choose text email. And because this is a regular expression validator, take a look. I'm going to scroll through this. And you see where it says validation expression, click there. And then click on the right side where you see the 3 little dots. And from here, you can choose the regular expression to be applied. So again, the purpose here is ensuring that the value entered in that field matches the format of an email. If you go through this, there are quite a few. You see there's German phone number, German internet email address. Select that one. And that below, which looks like a bunch of nonsense essentially, right? When you first look at it, is actually a regular expression. And what it helps to do is ensure that the format of the entry is correct in terms of being an email address. Obviously, you would have to take a separate class on all of this, but just click OK for our purposes. The beautiful part is that it's pre-made. So again, make sure you set the error message, the control to validate, and the validation expression this time. Once you've done that, just click off that panel so it goes away. Let's repeat this now also for enter date. So now I will say required field validator. And I'm going to move a little more quickly. Right click on it, properties. I'm going to say here enter date under error message. And then down below, well, let's do it this way. It's be more clear. Must enter date. And then down below, if I scroll through it, again, control to validate is going to be txt date. All right, so make sure you've got those pieces of information matching. And I'm going to click off that panel. That's it. All right, so let's give this a go in Chrome. Hit Google Chrome. Let's see what we've done thus far. Okay, and an error occurs. We've got to fix this error. Web Forms unobtrusive validation mode requires a script resource mapping for jQuery. We need to fix that. So close this. And the way to fix that is as follows. It's nothing obvious. Go into web.config in the Solution Explorer on the right side. And we need to add a setting that looks like this. You're going to type app settings. And we're going to add a new setting for our application. And to do that, so you will do this. You will type add and the key equals. And then you specify the value of the key. So I will say validation and then settings, colon, and then unobtrusive validation mode. And then at the end of all of that, put value equals none. So this is required, this app setting, this application setting is required to ensure that validation works. As you just saw, now it didn't work. Okay, so make sure you just save all of this. So unobtrusive validation mode. Okay, close this now. And give it a go in Chrome again. Let's see the effect. All right, so now it loads, no problem. That is what we want to see. And let's see. Imagine I enter some value. And I enter some value over here. And then I hit enter on the keyboard. And it says must enter valid email. You see that? And obviously you would have to reposition this with greater control. But the point is that it's working. Okay, if I remove the enter name and I hit enter on my keyboard, it says must enter name. Same thing over here. Must enter date. So remember, I'm placing the cursor in the box, hitting enter. Placing the cursor in the box, hitting enter. Placing the cursor in the box, hitting enter. Okay, so we've got some basic validation happening. That's good. Close this. All right. So the next stage now we continue. So below all of this now I'm going to add a new control called a calendar. So type following calendar. And then left press and drag a calendar and drop it into the page. And you see where it says over here, auto format. You can click on that and then you can choose different styles of the calendar. I'm going to close this though. So nice calendar. You can even leave the default, that's fine. At the bottom, under the calendar now, I'm going to put in a button. So type in the toolbox BUTT. So put a button in there. And the button will be used to submit everything to the server. And because that is so, we want to fix that. So right click on the button and go to its properties. And it brings up the properties panel on the button object. So first of all, the text should be different. It should be something like submit or save. And then scroll and change the name so that it says BTN submit. That's how you reference that control in your C# code, BTN submit. Okay, hope you've got that. Okay, click off the panel so it goes away. Now you've got a nice button that says submit. Next stage, I'm going to add, again, a grid view. And the grid view will reach into the database table after we submit information and pull it back out and show it back to us to be sure that it looks the way we intended to look. So left press and then drag a grid view into the page as shown here. Next stage in the process, you can leave that grid view. You don't have to rename it. It's only one. I usually rename controls if I have multiple controls of the same kind, like 5 text boxes, then you need to differentiate between them. So for our purposes, to save time, I'm leaving the calendar with its default name. I'm leaving the grid view with its default name. That's good enough. Under this, take a look. I'm going to add a label also. And the purpose of the label will be to potentially show any errors that might occur. So type label and then left press and drag a label into the page. And maybe so that we remember, I'm going to switch back to source view for a second. And for the label object, which is right here, I'm going to rename the ID so it says LBL error, like that. So this is what we have created so far. As you can see, we have the label, we have the grid view, we have the button, we have the calendar, and notice that the validators that we have added are shown here. You see that? So for example, let me move this up a little bit. For this one here, you have, I'm going to break this up into multiple lines so it's more clear. It looks as shown here. You've got the box, then you've got the validator. The control to validator's txt name, correct, it's right above it. And then the error message is must enter name. Of course, you can change these property values here if you like. You don't have to do it always in the properties panel. You can do it here too. Same thing with the other one down below, like that. So that one takes two of these validators. I'm going to space them out. So again, one is the required one, and the next one is the correct format validator for emails. All right, and then the next one looks like that. All right, I'm spacing these out a little bit. It doesn't matter what the code looks like here. Spaces like this don't count. Okay, so let's see. In design view, we have a basic interface now. And of course, to make all of this work, at the next stage, you need to add an SQL data source. So from the toolbox, type SQL data source, drag and drop an SQL data source in here. You need that. And you can leave it named SQL data source 1, or you can rename it, of course, to whatever you need. Okay, so now let's switch back to source view for a second and make sure that you've got this right here, the data source. And if you like, you can move code around here too. You can like left press while it's highlighted and drag it and drop it into a completely different position in your code, you see? Okay, good. I'm going to give it one launch, so hit Google Chrome. Let's see what happens here. And we've got a decent looking interface present at this point. We've got 3 boxes that have validation enabled. We have this box here, okay, the calendar. We have a submit button and a label where we will show errors. Now, one more thing that you want to avoid is take a look. Reload this for a second, and notice when I interact with the calendar what happens when I hit 28. Okay, over here. Nothing, not much, right? Except look very carefully, you see the little page icon in the tab spin. You see that? Look up there. It spins. So you're getting stuff from the server. But now take a look. Hit where it says go to the next month, like that. And again, it's spinning, you see? All right, so before I close it, take a look. I'm going to input now, for example, here, Bob. I'm going to enter an email, so bob@gmail.com. I'm going to enter some date. For now, it doesn't really matter what you input. And then hit submit. All right, so that's good. We're not getting any validation errors. Here, remove part of the Gmail. And immediately it says must enter valid email. You see? Okay, I'm going to reload this one more time. And then leave that blank. And you see it says must enter email. So things are working well overall. Let me reload the page and close it. I want to reload it one more time so you can see. Hit Google Chrome again. Okay, and I just hit the submit button on the bottom. And notice that in that case, must enter name, must enter email, and must enter date all show as messages. So the submit button, as you can see, acts on everything. Let me close this. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here in the next video. We'll develop the C#